Okay, so today we're going to start making a front cover for our sketchbook. Next week we'll look at putting all of our work from lockdown and making it all into a sketchbook. Here's some of mine from the whole of lockdown. So we're going to putting lots of these all together next week to make our sketchbook. So for today we're thinking about our front cover. So you're going to need an A4 piece of paper. It's up to you whether you want to work landscape or portrait. Definitely need a pencil to start with. You might need some pens, some watercolours, whatever you want to use later on. I've also printed out, I've started thinking about what I'd like on my front cover. So I've printed out a few images that I quite liked online. I've got some walking boots there. I've done quite a lot of walking in lockdown, so that made me think of that. And a bird and some feathers, kind of indications of our project. I've also printed out this sheet, which is all houses, little line drawings. I might collage some of this. I might use parts of it and collage it into my work later on. I was thinking that's a good indication of how much time we've spent at home, so it's representing that. So the things that we want in on our front cover are your name and the title, Lockdown Sketchbook, and then any images or any other text that you want to put into it. So I'm going to start mapping out. I haven't really planned this out at all, but I definitely think I'm going to start with just mapping out really loosely where things are going to go in my composition, in my arrangement. So I'm going to think about, first of all, these boots, and I want them quite large in here. I'm not going to draw them in detail yet, in case I want to move them, but I'm going to map out just with the pencil, quite sketchy, and just map those out because I think they'll go really well at the bottom. So we're going to have one boot in there, and the other boot, the front of it, will come over, come up there. So just to give an indication of where those boots are going to sit, how much room and space they're going to take up. And I can adjust that later. I could change it up later if I wanted to, make them a little bit bigger. And I can also add some more of the detail later as well. So that's roughly where the boots are going to sit. Just put a bit of the sole on this one, and that gives me a bit of an idea of where those boots are going to sit. You can see how lightly I'm working at the moment because I haven't added any of the details yet, and I want to make sure things are right. So I'll add more detail once I'm working either with the pencil or in watercolour, or maybe a bit of biro a bit later on. So I think the next thing I need to think about is where I'm going to put the main titles. So I was thinking of maybe having a feather with the title on top, Lockdown Sketchbook. So I might create some visual movement by having a really nice curved line that comes up from here, running across. And this is going to be one of the feathers. So I'm looking at the different feather pictures that I've collected, and maybe they're quite abstract. I could use them in different ways. So I'm working from those at the moment, and thinking I'm going to make them really nice and big. So just going to create a bit of a rough outline for that. And they can actually come right up elements of this into my boots. Would be really nice. And I'm just changing the design from what I can see. I'm not following it exactly. I'm just looking at some sections of some of these and just mapping that out. Now I was thinking of trying to think of different ways to do the text. Just map the end of that feather there. So what I could do with this feather, rather than just doing it exactly like this, I could have maybe some of the letters into the parts of the feather, or I could have the lettering above the feather. I think there's a lot of letters in Lockdown Sketchbook. I think that might be a bit too many sections on my feather, so I'm going to keep it simple and just map out the feather as it is for now. I'm not going to add loads and loads of different sections. So this feather looks a bit like a leaf at the moment. There we go. So roughly mapped in. We've got the feather. Now I can start thinking about adding the letters. So my lettering needs to come across and match that curve. And what I sometimes do with lettering is work out what I'm going to write. So Lockdown Sketchbook. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so Lockdown takes up less room than Sketchbook, and there needs to be a gap between. So I make a rough line of where the gap between the two words is going to be. And then what I often do is draw a top line. So I might come down thinner there and draw a top line for where the top of that lettering is going to come. And it can get bigger and smaller. It's up to you how you want to do your lettering. And then I can start mapping in my letters. And again, I'm going to do that lightly first. Not going to make them double letters yet, like big chunky. I'm just going to map out just normal, or nearly made it. So that's actually going to become my N. Then my gap's going to be here. So I know that I need to be a little bit careful now. Make my letters a tiny bit thinner. Sketch. See? And hopefully just about fit it on. Sketchbook. And a nice big K at the end. So that's where my title's going to go, my Lockdown Sketchbook. Could get a rubber now, just rub a bit of that outline out. I can find one. Take a bit of that out. Oh, it's just smudging it at the moment, so I'll leave that for now. So, got that in, and I also need my name in this somewhere, and I might have that curving round the boots. So I'm going to follow, I'm going to draw my top line in, draw a line in here, that's where my lettering's going, and then I can just start here, and again, just lightly sketching in, following the curve and coming up here. And what I might do later on, because we've got the laces in the boots, I might actually make this into stitching. So I might have this as if it's, make it look as if it's been stitched in, because there's stitching on the boots as well. So I think rather than having solid lettering, I'll make that into like a stitched name, would be really nice. So I've just got a bit of space now at the top of my page. So the other images I've chosen are a bird and some flowers. So I don't need to use all of that. I definitely like the bird. I kind of chose the bird from our bird drawings looking at Abby Diamond the other week, and I was thinking it would be quite nice to be free as a bird. I'll fly off anywhere at the moment. So I'm going to think about maybe turning my page slightly and then mapping in and having the bird coming in off of the edge of the page rather than fitting everything in. And again, I'm just going to map out really, really lightly just where different things are going to be. I think this needs to be lower down, so let's correct that. So my bird is coming in there, its body, and hints of some feathers and its wing going off there, and then got the other wing and hints of the feathers going off behind the head there. I'll just work out roughly where that eye is so I know where to put it in later when I'm starting my work in pen or in colour. And I might put some hints of where some of those sections are. So that's where my bird's going to go. I could carry it on down here behind that section, or I could just, I think I'll just leave it there for now, and I have maybe that bit in a different colour. And then I might choose to represent some of these flowers up in the corner. So I'm going to map those in. I think I'll start with the lilies. So again, just mapping out really lightly where some of my petals are going to go, and again I'm having those going off underneath that lettering strip there. And then I'm also going to have the flowers just going off the edge of the page rather than trying to fit them all into the section. Got one there and another petal going back. There, and there'll be another petal coming in there. Got a few of the stamens coming out there, which I might make the stamens come in front of some of the text to be quite a nice link between where the text is and where the flowers are. So I might need to think about later on maybe adding some other sections to the background, or maybe some like just washes in watercolour, or maybe some patterns if I wanted to, but I've mapped out really, really lightly. Now the next thing I would do is either work with your pencil to map out a bit more firmly now, and press a little bit harder, maybe sharpen your pencil and then press a little bit harder and get the details in. But what I'm going to do is start working in pen. I'm a little bit more confident, and I'm going to start mapping out. So where I was doing my stitch work, I'm going to get that in first, just in the pen. Okay, so I'm just putting that in, because then if I've worked in pen, I've got my lines down, and then I can rub all my pencil lines out, get rid of all the sketchiness a bit later on, and then I could start working in some colour or some coffee, or could start doing some tone in my pen, so that everything looks a little bit neater then for me to carry on working with. Okay, so I'm going to get that lettering done. I'm also going to put a lot more detail into my feather here, because it's a little bit basic at the moment. So I'm going to stop and we'll come back in just a minute. So I'm going to carry on finishing all my nice neat outlines and working in pen.